What's up, everybody? This is Ricardo Rodriguez,
and Matthew Messick,
and this is
the Profits Over Wages podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Profits Over Wages podcast, where we do weekly interviews with highly successful business owners and entrepreneurs. We discuss life, business, and entrepreneurship to bring forward the lessons learned from success and failure, and most importantly, have fun while doing it. On episode 58 of the podcast, Matt and I sit down with Gary Davidson of Castle Law. He is the #1 real estate attorney in Chicago. He represents hundreds of investors and a wide variety of businesses and contractors in corporate affairs, ranging from closely held corporations to publicly traded companies such as ExxonMobil. On this episode, Gary talks about what it takes to be the #1 real estate attorney in Chicago, why as a real estate investor you must have multiple solutions for motivated sellers, and as an example, Gary goes in depth about how to properly do land contracts. We also talk about why building relationships with others in the industry is the most important thing you can do to grow your business. Without further ado, Gary Davidson.
So Gary, I'm actually excited that you're here. You're like one of the top attorneys in Chicagoland, if I'm not mistaken. And
actually, Matt,
are you pretty down there?
I hate to correct you.
Are you #1?
Yeah, we just passed Cadillus.
Oh shit!
That's awesome, man. Congrats.
Thanks.
How many, what does that mean? Like the amount of transactions, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that's just going to be based on transactions, so volume closed. And so there's a report called Market Track that comes out every quarter. It's really just based on when I talk about a circle of success. Mm-hmm. And when I wake up in the morning, I spend all my time trying to get about 10 key relationships business, because I know that those 10 key relationships can get me more business than I ever possibly could get for myself. Mm-hmm. So, there's a book called The Go-Giver, and it's all about providing excessive value to other people and helping other people grow their business and not being so focused on yourself.
Yeah, because when you provide solutions to other people, then it just comes back to you tenfold. And obviously you've done that and figured that out.
Well, and I think we were talking before we even started, and my dad was an assembly line worker at CAT. My mom was a secretary, so I didn't come from any sort of background of affluence. So for me, because I've achieved that pinnacle of success in my industry, my why when I wake up in the morning, what gets me up, what gets me excited, is to help other people create that life worth living and a legacy worth leaving.
Okay, so if you had this modest upbringing, how did you get started in what you're doing, and how did you get from there to where you are now?
Well, there's different types of personalities, right? You've got, high I's, high D's. Since I'm a lawyer, I never answer the question directly, but
it depends, right?
Yeah.
That's the answer to everything.
But I remember when I played football in high school and played football in college, Division III. And I remember a guy asking me one time, he said, Gary, when you were a sophomore in high school and you weren't the starting linebacker, did you ever wish that the player in front of you got hurt? And I said, every single second. So it's that internal drive, that internal wanting to win. Now, Did I really want that person to get injured? No.
No, I just wanted your chance.
But you wanted your chance and you want to overcome. So, look, I always tell people, whether it's real estate or you're selling ice cream cones or hot dogs, if you're getting into real estate because you just want to make money, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. But what you have to do is you have to identify something that lights you up and pays you well at the same time. Because if you don't have that passion, you're never going to be able to be successful.
Yeah, because to get to that level, you got to put in a lot of work. And if you don't have a passion behind what you're doing, you're going to give up immediately.
Absolutely. It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. So we see it all the time with Silicon Valley's startups. Mark Zuckerberg was passionate about Facebook. Mm-hmm. And he was passionate about interconnecting people. You guys are passionate about redeveloping properties and giving people the opportunity of home ownership. That's why you're successful, because you're passionate about it. It just happens to pay you well at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it always talks about purpose. I'm reading, still reading that Think and Grow Rich book, and it talks about, you know, having a purpose behind what you do, because having that purpose is always going to propel you to do whatever it takes to get you to the level where you want to be at.
Absolutely.
But I kind of wanted to go back a little bit. How did you work for another law firm at first? Did you start your own thing? Or like, can we go back a little bit to kind of see how you got your start? Because I'm curious.
What happened after college football?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, I played 2 years, and then I discovered Pabst Blue Ribbon and women. When I graduated from college, I grew up and I used to ride my banana seat Schwinn green bicycle about 4 miles down the road to my best friend's house, and I would drive it down a lane. And down that lane was this big, beautiful house on this big, beautiful lake. And Matt, you were just at my house last week.
Yeah, that's what that is.
That's what that is. And
Wait, that's your house, the one with the boat right behind it?
Yeah.
It's a boat, a private lake with 8 houses, like 8,500 square feet.
Nice.
Something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Giant semicircle driveway. Fits 20 cars.
But the only room in the house that I love and adore is the little back shed off the back. That's the only part of the house my life lets me use. But I would go to this house, and it was my best friend's dad. And my best friend's dad was an attorney. And at that time, my dad was on strike. Caterpillar was striking throughout most of the 1980s and early 90s. And so I said, you know, this is what I want. I always liked fishing. And so that was my drive. And so I went to law school. I graduated from law school. I went to work at a law firm. Well, I was the court administrator for the 16th Judicial Circuit for a while, which is out in King County. But then I went to a law firm called Mahoney, Silverman & Cross, and Tom Cross was one of the members of that firm. And Tom at the time was the House Republican leader in Illinois. As a result of that, we also represented a lot of municipalities because who better to be your attorney than somebody that's in the Illinois General Assembly that allocates funds to all the municipalities, right?
Yeah, of course.
We live in Illinois. This is politics.
Illinois, after all.
Yeah, so I represented about 10 cities in the southwest suburbs. I had an opportunity to go to the firm that I'm currently at. It used to be called Brumman, Jacobs, Hamel, and Davidson. And I started representing builders and developers, say between 2000 and 2006 when the market collapsed. I was representing huge, big box developers and retails. If you had an IKEA or a Bass Pro Shop, I would be the attorney doing all the entitlement work. Why?
Oh, shit.
Well, who better to be your attorney than the former city attorney? So I was doing that. And then when the market collapsed, I actually swam upstream and started doing residential real estate. So when everyone was getting out, I got in because I started representing a lot of high net worth people who are buying all of the distressed assets.
Right, because that's when you want to buy, right? When people are getting out of it, when everything's on sale. That's like when they come in and buy thousands of houses a month.
Exactly. So if you ever want to know when the right time to buy is, you got to look at these big funds and what they're doing. They have MIT grads from Harvard. They know what they're doing. They're a lot smarter than us. So we observe their habits and we mirror habits of highly successful people.
Right. So what are the funds doing right now? Since we're on the topic.
Yeah. So Illinois and the Northern Illinois area presents a large challenge to funds. And that's a very distinct advantage to all of us normal people, right? The funds have had a limited success in the Chicagoland area because of all the municipal requirements and the municipal restrictions and all of the different governmental regulations and the no rental communities and condo associations and all of the different red tape. So while they have a lot more money than we'll ever know or have,
right,
we normal human beings, investors that are listening to this podcast, have the ability to understand specific requirements in Calumet City and Dolton and anywhere else in between, Evergreen Park, wherever it might be. So to answer your question about what the hedge funds are doing, most of the hedge funds are actually out of the Illinois market right now. There's very few hedge funds that are actually operating in Illinois. They're in Florida, they're in Atlanta, they're in Arizona. But right now, there's a huge opportunity for investors because those folks are not here competing against them.
Somebody was telling me that what was it? Blackstone got in trouble after they started picking up a lot of properties because they would only buy them in like 3 entities or something like that. So like once the city started finding out that they were their properties, a lot of them were like skipping permits. They were doing a lot of stuff behind the backs of the city. So then the city actually started targeting them and putting in work orders in a lot of these buildings that they own because they bought so many with just like the same pretty much like the same beginning of each entity. So like they kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it was easy to
recognize. It was easy to spot. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a target on their chest, and they have unlimited access to funds. So, one thing we know in Illinois is there's an ever-increasing desire for additional tax revenues because we're in a very distressed situation, whether it's the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, so they're always looking for opportunities to generate revenue. So hedge funds were an easy target for them.
There.
Okay, so how long have you been at your firm now? You said since 2008?
Yeah, so somewhere around 2006, 2008, the firm eventually became Castle Law for branding purposes. We have multiple locations.
Was it named after your house?
No. Actually, Castle Law is a legal concept. And it's your home is your castle. And in many states like the state of Texas, if somebody enters your home, not to get political,
get shot.
Castle Law allows you to defend your access to rights to your property. But more than that, it's a metaphor for protection. Mm-hmm. Nice. It's a metaphor for obviously housing and a lot of the different things we do. Because we do have 17 attorneys. And we focus on a lot of different practice areas, including very sophisticated corporate and estate planning. We're just like like doctors have become, right? Most of the attorneys in the Chicagoland area don't have the luxury to have something set up like I do, which is that attorney does a DUI on Monday, they do a divorce on Tuesday, they do a real estate closing on Wednesday, and they draft your will on Thursday. Now,
and evictions on Friday.
Yeah.
And if you do everything?
We do, but each attorney specializes. So it's just like if you were to go to a physician's office, if you need an oncologist, you go to the door to the left. If you need a real estate attorney, you're going to come to me.
How did that concept start? I mean, what was it at the beginning when you joined the firm? Was it like mostly real estate?
No, actually, we were very much a general practice law firm. And what I found was there was a massive need to have attorneys that specialize and are experts in one thing. And the only time you get that, I started out actually at one of the largest firms in Chicago. The only time you typically would get that is if you go down to Lord Bissell and Brooke, Mayer Brown and Platt, Winston and Strawn, and then you're in the $750 to $1,000 an hour attorneys. Mm-hmm. Well, in the suburbs, I wanted to be able to provide high-level expert opinions at suburban rates so that the person, I didn't have attorneys doing DUIs on one day and divorces on the next. Because if you think about that just for a second, it is a bit scary that the same person that is planning your estate is defending someone in court for DUI and then doing a real estate closing. You can't be an expert at everything.
No, you get double because the guy comes home with the DUI and his wife wants a divorce the next day.
This is true.
What is that saying? Jack of all trades, master of none.
Jack of all trades, master of none. And we all have to have a specialty. In your office, I'm sure you have buyer's agents, you have listing agents, you have people that work with investors, people that work with traditional buyers and sellers. And that's because you need to have people that have that expertise.
Mm-hmm. So if you have you have 17 different attorneys that specialize in different things, like what does each one have one thing they specialize in? Like what are What does that all include?
Yeah, so we do pretty much everything with the exception of things like patent law. We don't do personal injury. So we don't do a lot of the what I would refer to as the retail type stuff. We don't do personal injury. We don't do, slip and fall cases in Chicago. We represent municipalities, corporations. We represent people who are looking to develop estate plans, corporations. We do commercial litigation. And obviously, we have a very large real estate practice.
What's your total combined staff at the firm?
Between the three offices, I don't know, maybe 40 people, something like that.
Where are the offices at? Now you said 3.
Yeah, so we've got, this is all south side. I'm looking to locate, we were in the Loop, and then I closed that. We're looking to locate in the Loop. I'm actually looking to acquire a firm in Northbrook as well. Right now, though, we're pretty much south and western suburbs.
Okay.
Oh, and then so you say you have a variety of clients, right? What kind of how's the ratio of your client breakup? Because you said you have municipalities, you have funds. I know you're associated with the Chicago Mastery Group that has like 400 members in that too. So you also work with investors, retail buyers and sellers. Like, what's kind of like that breakdown of your client base?
Yeah, so most of my specific clients, Gary Davidson's clients, are going to be property investors, and those would be wholesalers. Those would be people who are buying and holding. Those would be flippers. Run the gamut. Because I came from that commercial real estate background, in that it's very, very sophisticated. So the typical real estate lawyer, a lot of people call them highly compensated document pointer-outers. This is the mortgage. Sign here, sign here, sign here. I've taken that very, very complex commercial background, and I've brought that to the residential real estate investor. Because in most are your listeners, a lot of them investors.
A lot of brokers, a lot of investors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to the brokers and to the investors, when you're getting involved in real estate investing, too often people try to be one-trick ponies, and what I tell people is you need to have as many tools in your tool belt as possible, because most properties, when you go to them and you're talking to somebody at the kitchen table to try to get that listing or to try to actually get that property under contract, if you're an investor, if some person only has one tool in their tool belt and that person isn't buying what you're selling, then you're out of luck. But if you have multiple tools in your tool belt that you can use, then you're always able to find a deal. And if I could, I'd like to give you an example.
Sure.
There's a concept called land contract. It's also known as installment contract. It's also known as contract for deed. We use this a lot. Let's say you go to a property and that property is currently appraised at $200,000. The person has a mortgage of $190,000. If you are a broker or an investor, if you're a broker, you're going to say you're going to have to bring money to the closing table to close this property. If you're an investor, you're going to say I can't buy this property because there's no skin on the bone, right? Now, if we look at it this way, if that person's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment is $1,200, but we know that the fair market rent for that property is $1,800, we identify what those persons' objectives are. I need to get out of this house because my mom's sick in Florida, and I need to get to Florida. Okay, if I could solve that problem for you, would you be willing to sell me your house? And then all of a sudden we use a land contract. We pay their principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment. We put an end buyer into that property because we sell them the property on a land contract. And that payment to us is $1,800. We're now cash flowing that property at $600 a month. And there is a huge pool of investors in the Chicagoland area, a massive pool of people who are hardworking, good people who have suffered some sort of catastrophic incident, whether it be an illness, whether it be a loss of a job, whether it be a bankruptcy, but they have money to put down on a house. They just don't have the credit score.
Right.
But they can qualify soon to buy that house. So now all of a sudden, you've got a property that you can pay a seller $1,200 a month to. You're selling an online land contract for $1,800, and you can sell that at a top retail value to someone 2 or 3 years in the future.
So you're saying you're buying on a land contract and selling on a land contract, and then you're just taking the spread, and then you don't have any other obligations with the property?
Correct.
You have the end buyer doing it. Yeah.
You've got the end buyer doing it, and it's a great strategy. So again, lease option, it's another option. The contract for deed, I've used it over and over again in no rental communities. As a lawyer, I have to come up with things that solve problems, right? So investors can't buy in no rental communities. Well, what we know, if anybody's ever taken an economics class in college, is if market demand is lower, prices are lower. Mm-hmm. So what happens in no rental communities? Those prices are lower. Investors say we can't buy them because they can't be rented. Well, guess what? Now we can, because we're going to sell those properties on contract. And even in today's United States of America, as it gravitates towards socialism, 2 private parties can engage in a contract to buy and sell real estate.
But it's like owning property and getting rental income without having to own the property and without having to have tenants, but you're still making the passive income every month.
It's a beautiful thing. And that's just one of a number of different tools that we need to have in that tool belt.
Nice.
And so what my point of this is we need to think at a much higher level as investors, as brokers, as attorneys, because there is opportunity everywhere. It's in front of us. We just may not have the solutions.
Right.
Well, it's also like, say someone has that property under contract for like 4%, or their mortgage at 4%, and then you can do that and basically make a mortgage or land contract to someone else at 6% because they have 500 credit score, but they're happy because all they cares about is their monthly payment, which might be the same as their rent on a different property, but they're like, oh, I can pay that same amount, but actually have it go towards a home and equity. And then you're making that spread, but you're solving 2 people's problems and also your own, because then you're making money on it too.
And Matt, you hit the nail on the head, because one of the things that drives me crazy about wholesalers is I don't know where this is taught. I don't know where this came about, but for some reason, the entire premise of wholesaling is based on deception and deceit. And, not telling people what exactly is going on, and $10 in earnest money, and we're not, this and all this, that, and the other. And there's opportunities in wholesaling where you're creating win-win situations. You're giving people the opportunity for home ownership that they didn't think they had. And when I wake up in the morning, my objective is never to ask for that handout, but always to give people a hand up. And so when an investor, we need to try to relieve ourselves of the thought process of us being predators and the people who were soliciting as being prey, and trying to create real value and eliminate some of the deceit in this industry, because you can do it with a high level of integrity and help everyone.
Well, you want to be a solution provider. When you come in, you're not like, oh, hey, I can buy your property and get under contract and sell it to
I
someone
got to
else
get my
behind their back.
contractors to come by to look at it, quote unquote contractors.
Right.
Like when they're like buyers.
But if you just come in, you're like, oh, I'm really experienced with creative solution, coming up with creative solutions for homeowners to get them out of like problems that they have. And if you're upfront with them and then you explain that, then you can solve their problems and you can make money and you can help other people on the end side.
Yeah, come from a position of empathy. I mean, too often people are taught that we need to have this call to action of, if you don't act now, you're going to lose the house and it's going to go to tax sale. Well, what do we know when people have fear?
Right.
They crawl into a hole. So come from a position of empathy and say, you know what? This could have happened to anybody. This is not your fault. Because every single wholesaler I've ever talked to, I'm sure this has happened to you guys, knock on the door. Mr. Johnson opens the door. You know that's Mr. Johnson. You know he's in foreclosure. Hi, I'm Mr. Johnson. I'm not Mr. Johnson. Can I help you in foreclosure? I'm not in foreclosure. This is all a mistake.
Been there,
we,
done that.
we used to door knock on foreclosures, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And
Shit,
this one time
it's like 7 years ago.
we knocked on this guy's door at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon on a weekday. He literally fell out of his house like drunk, like fell out like when we opened the door. And then we go, no, and then we asked them, oh yeah, your house is going to foreclosure sale or sheriff's sale in like 3 days. We want to see if we can lock it up, or well, for us to like lock it up to buy it, and then we could push the sale by 30 days. And he was like, oh no, he's like, I paid it off yesterday.
Right.
And we're like, sure you did. But at the time we were just like, oh, what do we say? So we just laughed, but it would have been like, okay, do you have the payoff letter? And then it's like, well, I know that you're trying to not be embarrassed and stuff, but we can help you out of this because you're about to lose it for nothing. And he had a ton of equity, and we could have gave him like at least 10 grand, and he could have moved on and not got that foreclosure on his record.
Yeah.
But what I want to do really quick, so everyone's like, oh wow, that was like, Gary, that's like an awesome thing. We could do a land contract to a land contract, which is like, step up from just like normal wholesaling. But then people are gonna be like, well, how do I do that tactically? So let's do a quick role play where I'll be the seller and you knock on my door and say you looked at the house and stuff and I want to sell it. How would you have that conversation of like not being deceitful and actually bringing that up and explaining it so it doesn't actually scare the seller because it sounds like some crazy wacky scheme that's like illegal that's not going to work out?
Okay. Yeah, so we're going to knock on the door, and I'm going to say, hi, my name's Gary. I'm interested in potentially buying your house. Could I spend a minute or two with you? Yeah,
go ahead and walk around and check it out. And, I'd really love to sell it. Let me know if you want to, make me an offer.
Okay.
I'm looking to move quick.
Great. You mind if I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
What's the mortgage payoff on your property?
It's $180,000.
Okay, $180,000.
You're like, that's none of your business.
Well, right.
If you're desperate and want to sell your house,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's what most people say. Like when you ask them what the mortgage balance is, like don't worry about it.
I mean, you could look it up too.
Yeah. So and I would say, and I can understand why you'd find that to be very confidential information. But if I'm going to be able to help you, it's going to be very important that I get you exactly what you want to net from this transaction. So if I can get you what you want to net from this transaction, and getting that mortgage information is important, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to share that with me?
No. Yeah, I'll totally share it. I just want to get, I want to sell this and move on.
So the key with that, of course, is we need to identify the objections, overcome the objections, and then close. So,
you know what, Gary, I'll be honest with you. I just want to sell this house. I'm not even really look to make much money, maybe just $5,000 for moving costs. But I've had probably 20 people in here so far, and they said that my house is probably worth around $200,000, and there's very little spread for someone to buy it as an investment. And it's like pretty dilapidated. So nobody wants to buy it to live in it. So I'm kind of stuck in a no man's land with being able to sell this. But I don't know. Is there any? What do you think? Like, you probably don't want it. There's not enough profit to flip it.
And, you'd be surprised. I've been in that situation, and there's a lot of people that are currently in that situation. We still haven't recovered from the economy in 2008, and this isn't your fault. If I could ask you a question, what's the one thing that I could do for you such that if I did it, everything else that's going on in your life would be easier?
Just buy my house so I can move.
Okay, and what about moving is important to you?
I don't want to be here anymore because the taxes are crazy and the winters suck, and I want to move to Florida.
Okay, so when would you like to move to Florida?
Yesterday.
Okay, so closing quickly is important to you and getting you to Florida. Is there anything that would make getting to Florida easier for you other than buying your house?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, and I'm going to pause this for a second because one of the things that might come about from this is, and the reason we ask this question is because we need to really know what their problem is. And they may say, you know what, I don't have any way to get rid of all this crap. I don't have $2,000 to pay this thing off because this needs to happen before that happens. So we need to know what that stake in the ground or that problem is that they're having. Because they may say, you know what, this is just all overwhelming. And you say, okay, well, if I could help you get rid of all of this stuff and help auction it off, get a dumpster for you, get movers, because this is all an overwhelming process, right?
Yeah.
So identifying that. So now Matt said the only thing he needs from me is getting to Florida. So then what we're going to say, we'll go back into role play here. So Matt, if I'm hearing you correctly, if I can close on this quickly, like, you know, myself or my partners, because you have to understand, Matt, I do buy a lot of properties and sometimes I don't buy them myself. But as long as someone closes on this property, do you care who it is that gives you the money?
Not at all. I like
Okay.
money's green no matter who gives it to me.
Now that statement is very, very key, right?
Right.
We've all of a sudden taken away the deceit of this transaction.
You're setting
We've
up
now-
the expectation.
We've set the expectation. We've told them that someone else might buy it. So then when they go to get an attorney and the attorney calls them and says, because we all know attorneys cause problems, they don't create solutions a lot of times.
Fucking attorneys.
Right. They do. So when that attorney calls and says, hey, did you know, Matt, that, you know, Davidson just called me up and he said his client's not buying it and he wants to assign it to Ricardo? Then the client's going to say, yeah, actually in the first meeting, Matt told me that.
That somebody else won't buy your house.
Really quick sidebar. Would you recommend putting and/or signs after your name in the contract?
No.
Because the contract is assignable because it doesn't say that it's not.
Correct. So
because every course out there, that's the first thing they teach all brand new wholesalers.
Yes.
And then you do it, and then it just outs you immediately that
Yeah.
you've never done a deal before.
So, we talked about the hedge funds and how they had the the big X on their chest. You know, wholesaling. You know, thank God for wholesalers and contractors, because if it weren't for them, lawyers would have the worst reputation. But the whole
Wait, do you think wholesalers are worse or contractors?
oh,
That's a great question.
That
We
is-
should do a whole episode on that.
yeah, we're gonna have to do a whole episode on that one. Contractors, we need 2 episodes.
We've had two episodes on contracts.
Yeah. But I mean, here's the bottom line. You know, we can be honest with people, and when we're submitting these contracts, if something comes to an attorney or any professional, they ask anybody in their family who has 2 brain cells, hey, this person offered cash. They were going to close in 14 days. They put $10 down in earnest money. They said that the inspection could happen at any point in time. The contract's subject to approval by partners.
They
And,
brought in 40 partners.
and I mean, you're like, no, you throw it in the garbage.
I mean, we did it at first.
It worked for us.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to do their first few deals to learn.
But yeah, so the and/or signs, it's not necessary. All you're doing is screaming on the top of a mountain, I don't know what I am doing.
Dude, our first deal was so bad. We used this like 1-page contract that didn't even have like
No.
a closing date.
No, it was like a 7-page contract, but it was so convoluted. And okay,
Like we made it up on our own and whatever. It was like it didn't even have a closing date, so it was just like indefinite contract.
our first wholesale deal was 6 months because we didn't have to do an extension because there's no closing.
So bad.
So
So close
guys,
it.
guys that are listening, here's the bottom line. It's real exciting to get involved in real estate. Just what these guys are saying is, you have to have your stuff in place.
Yeah.
So everybody calls me, do you have this template? I found this online. Having the right contracts make all the difference in the world on whether or not you're going to have an easy, smooth transaction or not a smooth transaction. I mean, it's Andrew and I from Chicago RIA. Andrew and I have a great time on stage talking about the contractor or the wholesaler that submitted the contract with a close date with his A client 2 weeks before his close date with us.
Oh, yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't heard this story?
So there was a property, we'll just call it, 123 Smith Street, and the wholesaler puts in a contract to close on August 15th. Okay? Andrew goes under contract, and Andrew agrees to close it on August 30th. So about August 14th, I because this guy doesn't have an attorney, right? Which when they don't have an attorney, then I just get out my sharp knife.
Start licking your chops.
So he's like, August 14th, he's like, you ready to close? You ready to close? Yep, we're ready to close.
On August 30th.
We'll be ready to close on August 30th. Well, no, we'll close tomorrow. We'll close tomorrow. No, well, I mean, I guess we could close tomorrow. Just let me know when you've closed, and then we'll close. Well, what do you mean? We got to close. We got to close our train. Well, I don't have the money. Oh, you don't have the money? Okay. Well, now this guy had a $60,000 spread.
What?
Andrew was willing to pay him that.
Fell into that too.
He was willing to pay that, and I said, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not your attorney. I mean, as long as you can buy the property, we'll buy it from you. We do have one solution for you.
F3.
I know some private money lenders. For example, Andrew's partner Raul's a private money lender. We could loan you the money. Be like a $20,000 origination fee.
Oh my God!
Well,
Is this for real?
10 points.
The point is, by the end of this, we could have given this guy $500,
And he would have.
He would have had to have taken it because he had no solutions.
Wait, what ended up happening?
Yeah.
How did it shake out?
So I didn't recognize that Andrew was quite this benevolent, but I think that Andrew allowed him to make like $10,000 because he felt so bad.
We went down from 60 to 10.
Yeah.
That's still
Oh,
pretty
man.
good. It's 10 grand.
Well, still that's savage. Like, okay, so
You could have just
really-
waited for it to run out of contract and go buy it directly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so if you're on the other end of it, I'll defend the wholesaler so you guys don't follow the same mistakes he did. Because you could also just said, well, first of all, if you have no idea what you're doing, like, you don't deserve to earn $60,000 anyways. But on your side, you could have synced the contracts to close on the same date when he sold it. When you wanted a contract with you guys on the BC, you could have easily just went to your seller and say, can I get a 2-week extension until the August 30th?
Yeah.
Or you could have went out and raised your own private funds or got transactional funding for 2 weeks, maybe paid $3 to $5 grand for it and still netted over 50.
I mean, you could have
There's three
raised the purchase
solutions.
price by $5 grand for the seller to give an extension for 2 weeks. They'd be like, okay.
Yeah. Or just be like, I'll put down more earnest money
Right.
and even make it non-refundable because who cares? But
Yeah.
anyways, it's still, it was a learning lesson. It cost him
Yeah.
50 grand, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
He still made
there's-
10 and that's probably his first deal if he had no idea what was going on. And didn't
Well-
use an attorney. And then also in the future, people always step over dollars to pick up pennies. Like, what attorneys charge $500 for a closing? I think I hired you for a wholesale transaction. I didn't even really need an attorney because I already knew what I was doing, but I didn't want to
Deal
I
with
just
it.
want to, I didn't want to deal with it. I want to make sure everything worked out. So if you're a wholesaler, even if you're like, oh, the A seller has attorney and the C buyer has an attorney, so I'm the B guy, I don't really need one.
So he
do it
didn't-
anyways because it's $500.
He didn't
And
pay
if you're not
$500 and lost out on 50.
Yeah, let me save $500 probably because you didn't know or wanted to, not hire an attorney and lost 50 grand on it.
Yeah, and man, you and I were talking about this with the picking up pennies and losing dollars, and I always tell people that you need to focus on very, very high level relationships, and as investors, because numbers are tight, we're always working down contractors, we're working down everything, but the reality is that you want to work with people who are the best,
Right.
who have resources. I get very aggravated at attorneys in general because we have commoditized ourselves. I don't want clients to hire me based on price, because if my relationship with you is based on how cheap I'm going to provide those services, it's a race to the bottom.
You're getting what you pay for it too. Like it's the value you're providing. So the more you pay for it, the more value you get.
So I talk to brokers all the time, and I say, most lawyers, whether they're solo practitioners or they're in a larger law firm, have probate attorneys. Most lawyers have divorce attorneys. Most, lawyers actually have more opportunity to drive business than most industries. Yet, you have to train the attorneys that you work with to identify this, because most lawyers are not entrepreneurs. Most lawyers are not entrepreneurs. So it's hand to mouth. They're providing a service. They don't think about driving business. Now, I started to think about driving business, and I came up with this concept because I was, quite frankly, tired of shaking my cup and having to pander to realtors for business. So I thought to myself, how is it that I don't have to pander for that business? And I said, because I'm going to provide more value than they can ever provide to me, so that I'm sought after and I get to the top of the pyramid. So for the brokers out there that are listening, or the investors out there listening, you have with your attorney that you work with a huge untapped resource in all likelihood, because that attorney's probably not currently doing it. Because if that attorney does 20 divorces in a year, what happens when people get divorced? They have to
sell their house.
They have to buy and sell a house.
Right.
Oftentimes. What happens when people die?
I don't know. They die.
The estate has
sell their
to
house and inherit the house.
The estate
kids
has to sell their house.
Yeah.
What happens when people have problems and they're in distressed situations? They call lawyers. Those leads are coming into my house every day, or into my office every day.
How many people do you send those out to?
So we send them out. I deal them out like a deck of cards.
Let me get on the list.
Yeah. What the hell? How come we're not on that list?
Wow.
Sorry, say that.
We'll have this conversation off podcast. But no, it's something that we do.
That makes sense.
And we and it's important to me because I want to help people grow their business, and that makes me a critical part of their business, so that I am a partner. And just soapbox for a second, brokers, if you don't listen to anything else in this podcast, please listen to the following thing. Eliminate the term vendor from your vocabulary. Eliminate the term vendor from your vocabulary, because when you use the term vendor, all of a sudden you are engaging not in big thinking, because there is not a shared responsibility to grow your business. A vendor pays for Subway sandwiches for the office. A vendor comes and, does the broker open house. Okay? I was talking to one of the top real estate agents in Chicago, and I said, why do you use this particular mortgage broker? And I wasn't saying that in terms of the person was bad. I just was being inquisitive. And he said, well, I use this mortgage broker because he takes me to Vegas once a year.
What the fuck?
Okay. Number one, that's a violation of RESPA. But beyond that, I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. I was being very honest with him. I said, let me get this straight. I said, you netted close to $1 million last year. Okay. You can buy your own ticket to Vegas. And I'm quite certain that why do you want to sit at Blue Man Group and be compelled to sit with the mortgage broker watching Blue Man Group when you could go with your wife or your girlfriend or whoever it is?
Or Gary Davidson.
Have you ever considered trying to build relationships where people are sharing business back and forth? And the key to that circle of success, is that everybody is trying to grow their business, helping people grow their business, and money doesn't exchange hands.
Right.
There's no referral fees. It's all just over the top, excessive value, helping people grow. And that was kind of enlightening for that person. They're like, they can send me listings. I said, all day long.
Yeah, of course.
All
I'll
day
take
long.
a listing over a trip to Vegas.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're
go to
netting
Vegas
$1
with
million,
every listing.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, if we send you one property in Hinsdale that's $750,000 for a listing. I mean, what's that? 3% of 750. You guys are better mathematicians than me.
25 grand.
25 grand. I mean, that's
No, I just guess.
that's a hell of a lot of $500 closings.
Yeah.
You go to Vegas, really good time there. Probably better than what they're already getting.
Yeah. So I mean, just guys, think about the big picture. Brokers that are listening, there's a lot of opportunity with your people, but take that vendor language out of your vocabulary and partnership, because partners hold each other accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to get into the question round, which brings up really good conversation, especially you probably have a lot of experience to pull from. If you had one piece of advice to someone just starting out, what would it be?
What I would say is get your buyer's list in place in advance of going out and putting things under contract if you're a wholesaler.
How did you first get your idea? Well, you said that for an attorney, you saw someone else had a giant house, and you're like, I want to have a giant house, so I'm going to become an attorney too. Is that the reason why you chose to become an attorney?
Well, let's talk about why I came up with the idea of Castle Law real quick.
Yeah, there's that.
So the idea behind Castle Law is that we're creating a franchise where we can create for attorneys a life worth living and a legacy worth living, because we are able to bring them in and do all their back office. We can do all of their billing. We can do all of everything, because lawyers typically don't like to run business. We can have them focus on making money, because 80% of the attorneys in the Chicagoland area, of the 100% of their time, only 40% of it is billable, because the other 60% is spent running their business, sending out bills, human resources, working with the tech people. So because I have economies of scale with Castle Law, we can bring attorneys in. So if people are listening and they have attorneys that are just frustrated and don't feel like they got anything that's a sale that they can sell because they think they own their own business but they own their own job, Castle Law is a place for them.
What's your best hiring tip or secret?
Use a DSI test, or use the I can't think of the name of
The
it.
DISC personality
The
or
DISC
the
personality
personality
test.
test.
It's free. You just, if you Google this personality test, you can send it to them for free.
That thing is spot on.
We actually have all of our anybody that applies to be an agent here. We have them take that test and send it to us.
How do you stay motivated?
I grind. I grind every day. I wake up, and when you can establish a why, when your vision is to help people, that you have to know what your why is. And once you've identified your why, everything else becomes easy.
Have you ever turned down a client?
All the time. I've put myself in the position where I qualify my clients don't qualify me. And that's where we all need to be as business owners, is we can't allow our clients to qualify us. We have to qualify them that they're good enough to be a client for us.
So what disqualifies a client to you?
When they don't have the same set of values, if they demonstrate that they have low integrity. My reputation is everything. That's all that any of us have. So that integrity, if they're not going to do things the right way, if I get any sense that they're don't have a high level of integrity or going to do things right, that automatically is going to disqualify.
How do you test for that when you're just having like a conversation?
You can kind of tell if you're talking to someone and they just seem super shady.
I mean, but if you're talking on the phone, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out, like, how would you...
I hope he's not listening. I'm not going to use his name, but I had some.
We call people out all the time.
Yeah, I don't know his name, but I had a person come up to me at Chicago Deal Vault because I spoke there the other night, and he started immediately saying, if I send you clients, are you going to give me money? And I mean, first
Well,
of all,
it's illegal
it's
for you, right?
It's illegal for attorneys, and I told them that. But more importantly, like, it's just, when people ask questions that they already know, I mean, when something's wrong, right? I mean, there are certain things where you need to ask the lawyer whether it's right or wrong. But, I mean, there are universal truths about what is right and what's wrong.
We know there's one investor who like gets excited when he's about to do something illegal.
Like he brags about it. He's
Like he literally brags about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, we can't do this," but and he starts laughing. I'm like, "What the fuck?"
It's like, because if someone's going to do that with someone else, it's a matter of time before they do that with you.
Yeah, we don't work with him at all, but
right. And I think
it shows their true colors and kind of warning signs.
I think you guys too know. I mean, when you meet somebody and you look at them in the eye and you talk to them, you know whether that person's real.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when I met Gary, I was like, I don't know about this guy, but then he bought me a drink, and I'm like, he's okay.
I was buying a lot of shots that night.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I want to touch on, which I think you kind of touched on before, which is probably the biggest thing in this business and just entrepreneurship in general, is to focus on being relationship built instead of transactional built. Because a lot of people, they want to make money on every transaction, and all they care about is
The bottom line.
fee, or they view people as vendors and stuff. But as opposed, if you're like, hey, if I can send you a bunch of referrals, I have a bunch of referrals, you seem like a great attorney, I would love to send them to you because I know they'd be well taken care of, and then I have someone to send them to. Is there anything, if I provide that value to you, is there anything that you could maybe provide to me that might help me? And then you're actually having that conversation of trading value for value instead of like, hey, let me monetize people off other people.
Right.
And then it comes across way better, and then you're going to get a lot more, like 10 times the value back than you would otherwise.
Yeah, it's the concept of abundance, right?
Yeah. What living or dead person other than family members do you most admire?
I really am a big fan of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. I will say I think it's a very timely with what's going on right now in the United States of America. There was a much higher level of dignity, a much higher level of civility, and you could have conversations with people and argue on the merits. And people were more interested in intellectual diversity than physical diversity. And we, I think, have somehow gone back in some ways where we have now somehow allowed, whether it's the media, whether it's ourselves, focused on division in a culture of victimhood. And so I admire that period of time. I mean, when I grew up, I'm 46, you could listen to CNN and there was a conservative person and a liberal person, and they conversed and they didn't call each other names.
They didn't yell at each other.
And they didn't yell at each other. Because we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting concept that not a lot of people talk about. Was there like a book or anything that kind of you can recommend that goes more into that? Of you're talking about like intellectual, making arguments based on intellectual merit as opposed to just like, okay, this guy yelled louder than me, so he might be right.
I don't know if there's a book. However, the general concept is if someone were to Google or look up the former Yugoslavia, they called it the Balkanization. So the reason that Yugoslavia broke up is it broke up and it started to balkanize or subgroup into different religious groups. And people didn't think of themselves as Yugoslavians anymore. And then you had Bosnia and you had Herzegovina and they had the Christians and you had the Muslims. And that balkanization is currently occurring in the United States of America. I get very frustrated, and again, this isn't a political show, but I get very frustrated, both sides, equal, that there should be one concept, which is America's a melting pot. This place provides more opportunity than any place in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Free marketplace and capitalism, and the opportunity to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So if people want to sit around and complain and engage in victimology, you're never going to be successful, because everybody in this country has an opportunity to be successful. But you have to shift your mindset. And you have to shift your mindset to a winner's mindset, and that there's nothing that you can't do in this great country that we have.
Amen.
America.
Should we just start playing the Star Spangled Banner?
No, it's going to make a good sound clip.
There you go. Oh, do you have a morning routine?
Yeah. So I'm extremely religious about. I get up. I say daily affirmations. I get up at the exact same time every day.
What time is that?
I'm getting up somewhere. I'm not. I don't know if you guys talked to Frank Montreux at all. I mean, that guy's insane.
He was on here.
I'm a 5 a.m.er.
Oh, I can't do it. I have to admit, I'd like to sit here and lie and say I get up at 5 a.m. I don't get up at 5 a.m. When I get up in the morning, usually the first routine is I say my affirmations. I say who I'm thankful for, and that I'm alive, and for my family, and then I jump on Facebook. And I see that Frank posted something 3 hours ago.
Yeah,
now I'm
right?
getting up at 6:30 in the morning. I think that's pretty early.
I think he said 4.
For
when we
you
talked to
interviewed
him.
him, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like
Look at that.
posted 3 hours ago. So, but no, I do have that routine. And I get up, I say my affirmations, and I think that's part of success. There's Rockefeller talks about it and whatnot. So,
What was the worst piece of advice that you ever got?
the worst piece of advice that I ever received. I think it might have been this. I don't have anything good, so I'm just going to make something up. I've been struggling with my weight recently, and this guy told me this morning, he said, the key to, you're going to lose 25 pounds if you don't, just make sure that your first meal is at noon, and you stop eating
fasting?
You stop. No, first meal's at noon, and you stop eating before 8.
Yeah.
And I couldn't bring myself to tell him that that's my current way I eat, and I'm 5'8" and 240 pounds.
You're like, I already tried that. It doesn't work.
Intermittent fasting, I think it's called.
Okay.
Yeah. What habits help make you successful?
I think the main habit that I have is, approaching everything from a giving perspective, of driving business to other people, of really, really focusing on others before myself. Because I think that's what, I don't pretend that I am the smartest. I don't pretend that I am the most nimble. But what I will tell you is that I am the most hardworking. I'll never miss a meeting that, I did miss your first podcast, but I can't remember what was going on with that.
Huh, me neither.
But I won't miss a meeting.
Matt does that shit all the time. So the wrong person to tell him. He didn't even tell me.
Yeah.
I just probably told you the night before, and I'm like, oh, we're selling for tomorrow? And you're like, oh, I don't know. We talked 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. So, it's just intense.
Why do you do what you do? What gets you through the tough times?
So my why, again, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but I do what I do because I believe that real estate is the one thing that provides an opportunity for people to have a legacy that's worth leaving. It's the one thing that if you can build a portfolio of properties, that if you fall and you hit your head and you have a stroke, you're still going to have income coming in. You can have the highest paying job in the world. But for me, as a real estate attorney, if I can't speak, if I can't read a document, I'm nothing. My income completely is eliminated. So that real estate is such a unique, key thing in the United States of America that everybody can have an opportunity to build, grow, and have that life worth leaving and legacy worth leaving.
Great.
That's awesome.
Nice.
One last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up is that, so you have a lot of wholesale clients, right? They do wholesales for you. Like what's your volume with that?
We probably are doing, so we'll do, I'm just going to think about this right now. So 2,500 closings or so this year. I would say maybe 10%, 10 to 15% of those are going to be wholesale. So
250 to 300 a year. So probably it was like 10 to 15 a month.
10 to 15 a month.
And the reason I want to point that out is just, we're always people always ask, and then obviously a lot of wholesalers don't get attorneys for two reasons. They don't know they need to. They think it's a waste of money. And then thirdly, they don't know a lot of attorneys who do wholesales or ones that they could trust. Because we had someone on here before that were like, we've never done a wholesale transaction. We won't do it. It's like borderline illegal, blah, blah, blah. Like they're scared of it and stuff. So I just want to say that you're one of the top wholesaling attorneys in Chicagoland. So if anyone who's listening to this does wholesales, you need an attorney, reach out to Gary because he's actually who we use, or I use for sure, for wholesaling to represent the B side, the wholesaler in a transaction, to make sure everything goes properly and you don't get screwed out of $50,000 because you wanted to save $500.
Where could people reach you then?
So best way to reach me is going to be via email. And that's going to be Davidson, Davidson, at castlelaw.com, just like it sounds, CASTLE, law.com. So Davidson at castlelaw.com, or 708-801-8000, 708-801-8000. And if you start using me and I like you, at some point I'll give you my cell phone number.
Nice.
All right. Thanks, man. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Yeah,
No
man.
problem. Thanks.
Awesome.
Till next time, guys. And that's it for another episode of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. One last thing before you head off though. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us your thoughts on iTunes. It would really mean a lot and help us reach more people. You can also find us on Facebook at Profits Over Wages Podcast, as well as on Instagram and YouTube. Until next time.